Picture this. You're hiking in Algonquin Park with some friends. The trail should take around 4 hours, but it's been 5 and you're still moving along. The sun, once high in the sky, is edging nearer and nearer to the horizon. Your water bottles are empty and what little food you brought is almost gone. Is that the same tree you passed earlier? Legs aching, you just want to get back to the car. Maybe head to a bar and have a drink. Yeah, something cold sounds good right about now, doesn't it? Pausing for a moment just to take a breath, you notice a tree in the distance swaying. No, wait, it's moving to the right. Does anyone else see that? The sound of radio static fills the air and your mother calls out to you. That can't be right. Your mom's at home. She hates hiking. The trees ahead start to shake. Your pulse races. It's him. Siren Head. A fan favorite cryptid, Siren Head has taken the creepy parts of the internet by storm over the past little while. Plenty of theories circulate, and even his creator is precious with some of the more specific details. This lanky, alarming mimic will be the focus of today's question. Hello and welcome back to the most mind-bending channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your disembodied voice in the void, Keegan Hughes, and today we're asking the question all sorts of online scare seekers have been wondering for a while. What if Siren Head was real? Before we get to the meat and potatoes here, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe if you want more curious content. Let's get started. If you're unfamiliar with the lore surrounding our megaphone-mouthed monster, do not worry. I will catch you up on everything you need to know. This shambling giant was created by Trevor Henderson, masterful maker of all things morbid. It is part of his elaborate mythos where he draws terrifying creatures and then incorporates them in digital photos to evoke an extremely creepy feeling. He even has some very short, very spooky stories to accompany a fair deal of these. If you like what you see here, make sure to give him a follow on Twitter to see more of his incredible creations. Henderson has made a few posts elaborating on the details comprising Siren Head's lore, so this is what we know for sure. It's about 40 feet tall, or about the size of a telephone pole. It has dried and mummified skin and looks like rusty metal, with arms as long as its body. The speakers on its head are always playing odd music, snippets of conversation, and it will also play shouted words and numbers when it's agitated. People have seen it with multiple different head arrangements, which is unsettling. Nobody's sure if that means that there are subspecies of Siren Head, or if the lone progenitor has the ability to rearrange its loudspeakers. It is most definitely a predator and uses deception to confuse and disorient its prey. Siren Head will play clips of the voices of its victims' loved ones to lure them in. However, it has yet to be revealed if or how it gains nourishment from hunting. Thanks to its ability to blend in with trees, Siren Head can remain totally still for long periods of time while hunting, waiting for an unlucky individual to draw near. It is mostly seen in rural towns and near heavily wooded areas, as these seem to be the places Siren Head has adapted to thrive in. Are we all on the same page now? Fantastic. Because if Siren Head were real, there would be a lot of very interesting developments on our dear sweet planet Earth. So earlier I said that Siren Head is a fan favorite, right? Well, upon being discovered as a very real and tangible creature, people would start to worship it. That's not to say that immediately people left and right would convert to Sirenism, but I think its already robust fanbase would definitely look to it as some sort of celebrity or minor deity. More t-shirts would be made, Siren Head videos would go viral, heck, people would even probably start organizing expeditions to try and come in contact with one. Forget the fact that it's extremely dangerous and will kill you. It's time to go visit our friend Siren Head. Now, beyond the scope of regular fandom, it is entirely possible that Siren Head cults pop into existence. Similar to the deity worshipping communities in movies like The Ritual or Rosemary's Baby, people would gather to bask in the glory that is a 40-foot broadcasting beast. Rituals and traditions would be developed, and I'm sure human sacrifice would eventually be introduced into the lifestyle of the worshippers. Whether or not these communities would be sustainable, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Our lanky friend here doesn't have a long list of people he's spared, but humans are resilient. As time went on, people would begin to find patterns and meaning in the different music, voices, and sounds produced. Omens and predictions would be made based on what sort of noises Siren Head generated. Kinda like reading tea leaves, among other types of divination. Again, these predictions wouldn't be reliably accurate, but people see what they want to see, right? It's likely that people would try to find out the sources of all of Siren Head's sounds, but I think that's a recipe for disaster. There are some questions that we're just better off not knowing the answer to. I'll leave it at that. Now, these Siren Head worshippers would not be in the majority. Most rational humans would want to stay the hell away from this thing. Cool as it is, it's creepy, dangerous, and unexplainable. Definitely not everyone's first choice for life mascot. So life outside the forest communes would not likely change too much. Leisure activities like hiking, camping, and hunting would be more closely regulated and, quite honestly, would probably lose a lot of popularity. No one would want to risk a night in the woods with a flimsy tent to protect them. Additionally, there would need to be some changes made in rural communities. A system for detecting and tracking siren heads would have to be put into place in order to keep innocent people living near forests safe. Whether that means increased ranger patrols or some sort of electronic tracking, it would have to be made effective quite quickly to prevent massive loss of life. In fact, we may see some sort of rural exodus, with huge amounts of people abandoning their pastoral lives in favor of cities free of supernatural risk. Boy, wouldn't that be creepy? Abandoned homes and cottages littering the countryside, as Siren Head and his worshippers roam the wastes. Driving along country roads late at night would take on a whole new level of terror. Keep your radio on low, just in case you hear a different channel playing somewhere outside the car. It's time to put the pedal to the metal. What bothers me most about Siren Head is the aggressive mimicry it exhibits. How did it come to look the way it does? Did it notice that humans took no notice of its presence thanks to its appearance? When did it figure out how to mimic the voices of loved ones to lure them in? See, these abilities imply that it developed with the express purpose of hunting humans. While I'm sure it could hunt other animals by staying still and mimicking cries, it seems specifically adept at killing people. Once all the non-worshippers leave the hunting grounds, eventually Siren Head would run out of people to kill. It's probably not too far a stretch to assume it would then go looking in more urban areas for prey. At first, it would stick out like a sore thumb. But soon, it would adapt to the urban environment. It could pretend to be a lamppost, a metal telephone pole, or other types of urban infrastructure. Good Samaritans answering a call for help would be greeted with swift death. The sirens of emergency vehicles so commonly heard on city streets would be replaced with the siren call of the tall, slim hunter. If there's only one Siren Head, this wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But if the multiple subspecies theory is true, we would be in big trouble. Now, that is just one theory, and it could play out totally differently. Siren Head could be a misunderstood monster with some kindness in it, Iron Giant style. I'd pay big bucks to see Siren Head dunk a basketball or DJ a wicked bush party. But hey, there's no way to know what would actually happen until it does. Until then, be careful out in the woods, okay? Call your mom before you start the hike, yeah? Ah, Siren Head, the big bad of the current internet horror mythos. It's just showing up everywhere these days now, isn't it? Running around in the woods, making terrifying noises, snatching people up and making them either disappear or burst at the seams. He is the epitome of evil, an uncaring human killing monster. But what if he wasn't? That's right, I'm asking you to consider a world where Siren Head is a benevolent force, not a destructive one. Yeah, we're gonna have to get really imaginative for this one. Hello, fellow friends and philosophers, and welcome back to the most mind-bending channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your voice in the void, Keegan Hughes, and today we're gonna ask the question, what if Siren Head was good? Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more screeching scares. One more thing before we start, Siren Head was created by Trevor Henderson. If you like this creature, consider checking out some of the artist's other work and maybe support them in whatever way you can. Links will be in the description. Wicked, let's do this. Alright, so for those of you who don't really know Siren Head, we'll kick off with a little refresher, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Siren Head is a 40-foot tall monolith with lanky limbs. Atop its slender figure are sirens, sometimes two, sometimes more. When it was first discovered, Siren Head tended to spend a lot of time in the woods, blending in with the trees. It would often lure hikers and campers towards it by playing sounds that they recognized, sometimes the voices of family members or the sounds of someone in trouble. However, it also became well known for blasting spooky siren sounds and playing songs that sounded a little wrong. Random blasts of numbers would make an appearance often too. This creepy cryptid didn't seem to have any real reason to hunt humans, but it did anyways. Sometimes it would pretend to be a telephone pole or a piece of installation art, standing perfectly still for long periods of time. But when a human gets close enough, it springs into action. Nobody knows its true mechanism of killing, but folks have made some educated guesses. First, it might just rip people apart, considering the size and strength of the creature. Makes sense, but what happens next? It doesn't seem as though Siren Head needs to eat people to live, so is it all just a game? Some say there are full sets of human teeth inside its sirens, giving it a terrifying facade. Another way it could kill is through use of sound. Some victims have been found after supposed Siren Head sightings while their soft tissues exploded. Eardrums, brain matter, muscles, and more. It's as though some high-intensity sound caused the body parts to rupture. Absolutely terrifying. Although I said it started in the forest, it seems as though the creature's slowly making its way to other parts of the world. Sightings have increased in suburbia and even in some urban locations. Folks say that it can change its appearance to more effectively hunt in any given location. Some have seen siren heads with more sirens than the average specimen, and others that kind of blend in with light posts and hydro towers. It seems as though a new breed of apex predator has entered the ring. We might not have too much time left before Siren Head on the loose is the new reality. Goodness gracious. Okay, well that might be a little dark. Let's reframe the situation. Siren Head could be good, right? We don't know for sure that he's evil. Well, actually we do, but let's put that aside for the moment. What if Siren Head was good? That's the question you all came for today. Well, there's a lot to talk about there. See, Siren Head sort of exists in a universe filled with other monsters, all created by Trevor Henderson. Most of these creatures are evil or malevolent, but some are just kind of neutral. However, the rarest of the bunch are the good ones. It's hard to imagine a creepy cryptid being explicitly good and actively working to help humanity, but they do exist. One such example from the Trevor Henderson universe is Longhorse. The beast is actually the enemy of Siren Head. How about that? Longhorse is a strange, soothsaying being that tends to show up right ahead of terrible disasters. But it doesn't cause the disasters, it actively tries to warn people of impending doom. Sure, it's real creepy with its ever elongated neck and constant crackling, but it means well. And what else can you expect of a monster? So Longhorse goes around smelling of cinnamon and helping people find it. So Longhorse goes around smelling of cinnamon and helping out people in its own odd way. If that's what we can expect of a good cryptid, let's try to apply that logic to Siren Head. Maybe if we invert a lot of Siren Head's tendencies, we can make it a good guy. I think first and foremost, we should count on it not killing people anymore. No more burst eardrums, no more leaving people hanging from the highest boughs of tall trees. Bare minimum. Check. Now let's think about how those sirens can be used for good. Maybe Siren Head adopts the usefulness of real sirens and actively warns people of danger. Destructive storms, potential bombs, impending attacks, all relayed to the populace ahead of time. Wouldn't that be lovely? Another interesting use of Siren Head's powers would be mimicking the voices of loved ones, but for good this time, not evil. Maybe the voice of a loved one who passed away could soothe a restless soul, or a message from a friend that one never got to hear. It's quite good at replicating voices, why not use it to make someone's day instead of luring them to their death? Plus, Siren Head could be the ultimate party machine. Imagine the gigantic living speakers that'll dance and groove along with you. Be honest, you'd definitely attend a party Siren Head was DJing. Totally unrelated, but Siren Head could be a baller too, no doubt. Just absolutely dunking on people and impenetrable defensively. Picture it. Now that the image of Siren Head hooping is forever burned into your brain, we can get back to making a realistic cryptid. See, if Siren Head just walked around doing nice things, we wouldn't be too convinced of its creature status. A real good Siren Head would likely remain hermitous, chilling alone in the woods for years, welcoming guests and lost people. Folks might make pilgrimages out to the abode of Siren Head to hear from their deceased relatives or to make offerings to it. It would definitely be hard to find though. That's the thing about mythical creatures, they really should only appear before people who are in desperate need. Which brings me to another cool thing a Siren Head might do. It could protect the forest and everything in it. Imagine you're lost in the woods and the sun is setting. Panic sets in and you think you're gonna be lost in the woods all night. Then out of the blue, a siren sounds off in the distance. You decide to follow it because this is the universe that Siren Head is good in, and boom, you're at the side of the road, a few kilometers from your car. It could lead people to safety. Wouldn't that be cool? Plus, with all of its crazy powers and such, it could prevent nature from taking any damage. Nope. Plus, with all its crazy powers and such, it could prevent damage from coming to nature. It could scare poachers off, prevent massive loggers from rolling in and annihilating the ecosystem. Imagine Siren Head protecting a little squirrel or a bird. Adorable. So we've got Siren Head acting as a de facto forest hermit / protector of nature. Isn't imagination a wonderful thing? It's almost as if Siren Head's a modified Ent at this point. Fun. I think the only thing left to do is give it a bit of a friendlier look. Maybe add some color through flowers and foliage, or make the whole thing look a little less jagged. Maybe even give those weird Siren Head teeth a smile. Great, now we've got a huggable, lovable siren-based beast. Is that enough to convince you that this creature could be cuddly if you give it a chance? I mean, it's not gonna happen, but wouldn't it be nice? Warning of danger, guiding people to safety, warming the cockles of our hearts, and doing it all with a smile. That's the good Siren Head. I wonder if anyone's gonna be mad that I perverted this iconic monster. Oh well, it's all just conjecture anyways. Remember folks, YouTube videos about monsters someone else created are not canon. Alright, we did it. We considered the possibility of Siren Head being good. Now let's never do that again. I like my monsters, well, scary. What do you think of my reprisals? Did I make a convincing case, or did I just sully the name of a cool creature? Would you hang out with a good Siren Head, or would it be a little too much for you? Whether you like it or not, 2020 was indeed the year of Siren Head. This fascinating and freaky cryptid has been haunting the digital landscape for a few years now, but it really took off at the top of the decade. It's easy to see why, too. The design is equal parts uncanny valley and eldritch monstrosity, with a little bit of technology blended in there for good measure. Tall, strong, and well camouflaged, finding Siren Head creeping in the background of many viral photos turned into a fun little activity. Of course, as is the case with most internet spooky celebrities, Siren Head also rode the wave of jump scare laden indie games onto the screens of monster enthusiasts everywhere. Another popular internet horror hub, the SCP Foundation, also got a lot of attention thanks to some wildly popular games featuring freaky creatures. With both mysterious creations trending at similar times, plenty of wires got crossed. This led to folks wondering if Siren Head might be an SCP or if it could ever be designated as one. Well, wonder no longer. Today on Life's Biggest Questions, we will toil to ensure that you never feel the need to ask, is Siren Head an SCP ever again? Hello fellow friends and philosophers, and welcome back to the most mind-bending channel on YouTube, Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host, Keegan Hughes, and today we are asking just that. Here's the short answer. No, Siren Head is not an SCP, but there's a lot more to this than you might think. Welcome to Halloween, where we dress up as hilarious Halloween things and have a blast. I don't know if you know who I am. Let me know if you can figure it out. Perfect. There is an SCP known as Siren Head. Siren Head's creator has done art for an official SCP, and lots of folks have made attempts to squeeze the real Siren Head into an SCP entry. So stick around and learn all sorts of odd stuff about everyone's favorite viral cryptid. Let's get to it. First, let's talk Siren Head, the real Siren Head. You probably recognize this enormous creature from all sorts of creepy paintings and videos, right? Well, it was originally created by Canadian artist Trevor Henderson. It started appearing in images he would upload to assorted social media platforms, often with a little story attached. Sometimes folks would come across Siren Head and think it was installation art, and other times they might hear something odd before coming face to face with their worst nightmare. Over time, these images and tales picked up a little traction, and Siren Head became something of a cryptid cult hit. Trevor kept making new creatures and sharing them with fans, and it seemed like that was that. But it wasn't. Thanks to a combination of TikTok virality, Twitter memes, YouTube videos, and knockoff indie games, Siren Head once again rose to the heights of internet fame. Everyone was talking about Siren Head. There was Siren Head bootleg merch. Siren Head was the topic of all sorts of YouTube videos. Other folks were making Siren Head fan art. You couldn't exist in a creepy corner of the web without being exposed to the gigantic screeching lad. This newfound ubiquity muddied the waters of Siren Head's origins though. Like with most internet urban legends, people made up their own stories about Siren Head, adding facts and figures that didn't mesh with Trevor's vision. Like Slenderman before it, Siren Head became a part of the grand internet canon, subject to the whims of 10-year-olds and creepypasta writers alike. This is where the SCP idea came in. Someone somewhere saw this hulking form and thought it would fit right in with all the spookiest anomalies at the SCP Foundation. This was a little odd, considering that a lot of the latest SCPs at the time were more cerebral and less monstery. However, the SCPs featured in popular games were more often from the first series, which was famous for its one-note scarefests. Wires were indeed crossed, and eventually it was believed by some that Siren Head was part of the SCP Foundation. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. Trevor had copyrighted his character and didn't want it being used on the SCP Wiki, which tends to be pretty public domain with their creations. Thus began a long and arduous fight to correct the widespread assumption that Siren Head was an SCP. On May 1st, 2020, Trevor Henderson tweeted out some clarification. He wrote, "Just to clarify, Siren Head is not and never was an SCP. Nothing against them, I just want to keep him his own thing." Which makes sense. He followed up with another tweet saying, "And I really love the SCP Foundation. It was and still is a huge resource for fantastic ideas and stories." So that's that, right from the horse's mouth. But hold on, if Siren Head isn't an SCP, why are there SCP pages titled Siren Head? 2 of them, actually. And that's actually a really interesting rabbit hole to hop down. So we'll start with SCP-6789, the fake Siren Head. When the rumors of it being an SCP started, folks were quick to draft a potential set of containment procedures. They ran to the SCP Wiki sandbox and put together an article in the style of an average page. Designating it SCP-6789, which is way off in the future by the way, Siren Head was given a backstory, some additional powers, and even a discovery log. But none of it really lined up with Siren Head's actual lore made by Trevor, and it was quickly taken down. Of course, people keep trying to get this fake Siren Head article up on the site because they think it's a good idea. While the writing might be interesting, Siren Head is a separate entity from the Foundation, and only Trevor can decide where he goes officially. In addition to the fan-created SCP page, there's also a vetted SCP known as Siren Head. Yeah, even after all that. But it's actually a lot more clever than you'd think. See, the author of SCP-5987 saw what was going on with folks attempting to get Siren Head into the SCP Wiki and decided to take up a slot to prevent this from happening. By naming their creation that is decidedly not the tall and screaming Siren Head, they took a name that folks wanted to use and used it for something else. See, SCP-5987 is the siren figurehead mounted at the front of a ship known as the Dukta Dadzig. You know, like the mermaid at the bow. In Greek mythology, sirens were beautiful creatures who would lure sailors to their doom using their enchanting songs. They would often cause wrecks by distracting those aboard ships. 5987 is a siren-shaped figurehead that could control ships within a range of a few kilometers and would often crash them so the crew aboard her ship could go and collect their treasure. Eventually, the Siren Head got tired of the crew's bidding and killed them all. These days, she's mounted to a miniature boat, floating around at a Foundation enclosure to her wooden heart's content. So technically, an SCP named Siren Head exists, but it's not the famous internet creature. It's a siren figurehead with anomalous properties. Fun, right? Now there is one more thing we can talk about concerning Siren Head and SCPs. We'll look back to Trevor and his many monsters. He's created dozens and dozens of freaky creatures over the years, some more popular than others. He's also a self-proclaimed fan of the SCP Foundation. Before Siren Head was forcibly associated with the wiki over and over, Trevor enjoyed reading SCPs of his own accord, and eventually he did create something that has been immortalized on the SCP Wiki. That's right, there is a Trevor Henderson monster lurking in the shadows, watched over by the Foundation. After he made a beefy creature known as Big Charlie, an SCP contributor reached out to him. User Gleam64 was inspired by Big Charlie, so he asked for permission to write an SCP based on the creature. Trevor gave it the okay, and thus SCP-4158 was born. Basically, 4158 is a big anomalous cow who keeps growing meat no matter what. It doesn't seem to be able to die and eats just about anything. The farmers who originally found it would constantly shave off and package its meat and pass it off as low-grade beef. These days, it's under Foundation surveillance, being fed a steady diet of raw beef, hay, wood, and bricks, but no more selling his excess meat though. That gets incinerated. So there you have it. Again, the short answer is no. Siren Head is not an SCP. However, there is more to the answer. Siren Head is an original monster created by Trevor Henderson and will not be crossing over into the SCP universe anytime soon. But there is an SCP known as Siren Head, but it's about a wooden statue bolted to a boat. Also, Trevor's work can be found on the SCP Wiki, but in a different way than you'd expect. It's pretty wild how one creature can take up so much mental real estate, especially in the age of infinite information. Still though, it's good to do your research and find out what's actually going on.
Siren Head. Doesn't it sound like a rock band from like the 80s or something? Now, I wish it was, but no. It's something way more terrifying than that. Siren Head is nightmare fuel, a massive beast that you won't see coming, but could kill you in a flash. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. The voice you are currently listening to belongs to me, Lindsay Ivan, your voice of reason for today's video, which is Top 10 Scary Siren Head Facts. But before I begin, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to Life's Biggest Questions. With that being said, let's dive on into the video. Starting off this countdown, we have its appearance. So let's start things off by learning about this creature's appearance. Siren Head is a 40-foot tall humanoid creature with two speakers protruding from its neck. His entire body is coated with dried, mummified skin. Siren Head also appears very malnourished and gaunt. Well, he will always maintain this appearance, even after feasting on multiple victims. He must have a super fast metabolism. Now, the only part of his body that is made of metal is parts of the speakers that are fused with his skin. He has speaker wires running down his neck and body which can also be seen pressed into his skin. In fact, when this creature is angry, it is said that these wires will begin twitching. Now, that's not all. his arms are said to be the same length of his body, making it easy for him to grab his prey. They also say that he has a long, retractable, snake-like tongue that can wrap around its victim's neck while he eats them. He can also rotate his head around his body like an owl so he can target his victims. So this dude is the definition of creepy. In our 9th spot, we have the origins. So where does Siren Head come from? Well, this will all depend on what your beliefs are. Some will believe that the artist named Trevor Henderson created the towering monster back in 2018, while others believe he's been around since the 1960s. The artist first shared an image of Siren Head on his Twitter in 2018, and it had a very creepy response with people coming forward with sighting stories. However, the 40-foot tall monster was reported to be seen for the first time back in 1966 when a family on vacation in the Arizona desert captured a picture of him. Turns out the family was doing some typical tourist stuff and explored the desert, which then led them to an old cemetery. Like most people would, they were snapping some pictures, but when they developed the pictures later on, they saw the monster standing there between some gravestones. That's one family vacation you'll never forget. Coming in at number 8, we have his diet. Now, Siren Head apparently only likes to eat 2 things. One of them being creatures called bloodlusts, and the other being humans. Now, bloodlusts are skinny creatures that do not have arms, ears, noses, or mouths, but they do have eyes on their forehead that act as their mouth. On top of that, these creatures are also super powerful, but Siren Head is more dominant and can kill and eat them easily. In fact, in order to capture the bloodlust creatures, Siren Head can remain motionless for multiple days. This allows them to attract multiple bloodlusts and then feast on them at once. However, humans are still their preferred meal. In our 7th spot, we have Siren Head's location. Now, in case anyone was wondering or worrying, there's no chance of you encountering Siren Head. In fact, most of the depictions of Siren Head are of them in the forest lurking behind trees. It is said that they hide in the forest until a local hiker gets lost, or just until the coast is clear for them to leave and invade the small town. It's said that if their hunting isn't going according to plan, then they will relocate to another area. Moving on to number 6, we have the history of Siren Head. Now, it's said that ancient rock paintings depicting this creature has been found all over the continent of North America. This proves that A, there's tons of them, and B, they have been residing on this land for a long time. In fact, it's said that there used to be a lot of siren-type creatures that used to roam the earth. However, the main Siren Heads are hostile creatures and attack the other creatures, making their form the most dominant. I mean, hey, survival of the fittest, right? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the sirens. Now, what do the speakers on Siren Head's head actually do? Clearly, they aren't blasting out nice music or helpful public service announcements. Well, the speakers give him the ability to release a variety of sounds. He uses this as a way to distort and manipulate his victims. He can play any sounds he wants, but typically he emits the sounds of sirens, screams, static, and human conversations. In fact, the sounds are so powerful that they can make your ears bleed and your brain explode. Not only that, he can use the sounds to trick his victims, as he can imitate the voice of anyone he hears. When he attacks a group of people, he can use their voices to distract them or lead them a different way. Moving on to number 4, we have his abilities. So we've already just established that Siren Head has the ability to distort his victims. But what else can he do? Well, Siren Heads are super strong. They can break down trees, throw boulders, or move other objects with ease. On top of that, they are super fast as well. So if it's a one-on-one between you and Siren Head, there's no point in even trying. You can't outrun him or even outsmart him. He is also the master at stealth. He can blend in seamlessly with the surrounding forests, so you won't even see him coming. And lastly, he may even be a shapeshifter. It's said that he may be able to transform into anything resembling a tall, thin pole. On top of that, apparently he can transform his head into street lamp lights. So maybe if you're out for a late night stroll, double check your surroundings. In our 3rd spot, we have the brain. Siren Head doesn't even have a brain. Yet he is capable of doing complex tasks and is quite intelligent. Someone tell me how this creature is capable of having strong cognitive abilities but is brainless. So Siren Head can execute elaborate plans, is the master at manipulation, and can think and process information quickly. Seriously, this creature just keeps becoming more and more terrifying. In our second spot, we have his nuclear war ability. Now, what's more terrifying than this giant skinny human-eating creature? Well, possibly the fact that he can cause a false alarm of a nuclear war and then end up creating one. Like, what? This creature just has all the abilities. He already has a lot going for himself. Why does he have to have the ability to destroy the world through nuclear war? These creatures can single-handedly destroy the planet. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Encounter. In 1986, people kept going into the Himalayan mountains, but then they would never return. As a result, they had a bunch of people disappearing without a trace. Now, police were sent to investigate, but when they got there, they heard an extremely loud ringing sound. It got so powerful that it caused some people to lose their hearing altogether, while others had extreme ear and brain damage. They fled the mountain immediately and were never able to find the missing people. Now, they don't know what to think of this, but some believe that that's one of Siren Head's homes and he feasts on tourists or lost hikers.